Greetings, everybody. Welcome to Chiliteracy. Happy Wednesday. Happy Halloween Eve. Ooh. Hello, everyone. How are we all? Hope we're all well. Amras, dreadful joke. 0 out of 10. How could you? But yes, hello, everybody. And I see everybody's jumped on the bandwagon of making screwdriver/screw-related jokes. Good job, everyone. Oh, shockingly easily. Yeah, I can believe it. Yeah, hello, everybody. How are we all doing? I hope we are all well. I hope we are all having a good week. And yeah, I hope everybody is feeling, I don't know, the appropriate level of spookiness. That's a new word. Don't know how it works. Nah. But yeah. Yeah. Sorry, my brain just went for a walk. Who have we got? We've got everybody in. We've got all of the good people. Well, you're all good people. Arian is apparently the ghost of Halloween future. Good to know. I am already spooked. Lady Mephistopheles, Yoru. I hope the packing is going well. Lady Mephistopheles, lurk away. I hope your spoons return eventually. Smallcog, hello. Parola, puzzle away. Hope you are well. Queek, greetings and boo to you too. Amras, hi. Andy Pants, welcome in. Llama, hello. Who else we got? Got anyone else? Parola? I think I already said hello. Lucy yawning in 3, 2, 1. Yep. You're feeling meh? Temporarily lost your will to exist, but I hope it returns to you ASAP. That kind of sucks, and I hope it comes back. Oh, Angeline, hello, welcome. Spookums indeed. Spookmas has come early, indeed, a day early. You met a cat that was trespassing in your garden this morning. You now have a new best friend. He's nice and he likes scratches. Excellent. That is always a good thing. New friendly cat to give scritches to. Always a good thing. But yes. Has anyone done anything particularly spooky, I guess? Sam and I did a jigsaw, which I believe he put on the Discord. My goodness me, that jigsaw was a difficult one. Weirdly more difficult. We've done a few now, and the first one we did was like a library, so there were just books everywhere, and weirdly wasn't as tricky as this one, because this one had a large expanse of blue sky with bats in, and the bats were in several different places, so yeah, just parts of it fine, when the sky and the rock wall were difficult. Yeah, so literally like the first thing I decided to tackle, and then the last thing we both decided to tackle. First thing was sky, last thing was rock wall, and it's just like, okay, right, great. It did take a while. Also, hello, Glennis. I assume Glennis. 3669. Morning coffee. Ooh, nice. Morning coffee, always good. Spooky day. Of course. Happy spookums. You're going to be winging your Halloween costume tomorrow, Lady Mephistopheles. All you need to do is take a picture. Nice. You managed to stock up on bones and skulls, Yoru. I hope fake bones and skulls, or I don't know, bones and skulls of, like roadkill or something. You had heard of Javelina trespassing in your yard last night? No idea. No idea what that would be. Oh, yay, Andy, of course, it's time change shenanigans, because our clocks have gone, whereas America's haven't yet. You'll actually get to listen to almost the whole stream. Hooray! Always good. You listened to a fantastic book called Thin Air by Michelle Paver. It was exceptionally spooky and will probably have nightmares. Oh, dear. But also, I like Michelle Paver's writing very much. As a kid, I read all of her, you'll not disclose any details, hides a shovel. Oh dear, Yoru. Do we need to phone the police? Yeah, I when I was a kid/teen, I read her Chronicles of Ancient Darkness and absolutely loved them. Like, really, definitely are something that have influenced my writing and things. So yeah, really like her writing, so I will have to look that up. The worst jigsaw puzzle you ever had was a 1,000-piece one that was just sheet music, all staves and notes and black and white and no colour at all. Oh, fun. I mean, yeah. Problem with me is I would just try and work out what the sheet music was, and then it would be like, oh, okay, that's easy. That goes here, this goes there. Although I don't imagine it would be that easy. They're peccaries. They look a lot like hogs, but are more closely related to deer. Oh, okay, interesting. They look like they're not. I wonder if they're similar to muntjac deer, because they look a bit more pig-like than deer, but they are deer. She's wonderful. You also really liked her book Dark Matter. Another one I need to read. Yes, I really like her stuff. The bones in the ocean are free. Thanks, Amorous. You can take them home. You have 458 bones. Good for you. Oh, it was multiple pieces, like a picture of a bunch of pages scattered across the surface. Oh, God. Oh, in that case, that's hell. I thought you meant it was just like one big score. Because that would be easy. Well, easy-ish. But yeah, multiple pieces. No, that's horrible. Don't like that. So, yeah, F indeed. I don't know what key it would be in. Maybe F. But yes. Tonight we have the final installation of Turn of the Screw, which may be a shorter stream. Probably will be a shorter stream, actually. I might do it in one. I might do it in one without a break, because, yeah, we don't have too much to go. And in theory, tomorrow, we haven't decided on a time yet. I put on the Discord 9. There's no F, there's only D sharp. How's that for scary? Don't even get me started. I will put a link to the Discord for anybody who's new and would like to join. But yeah, we are planning on watching a film on the Discord tomorrow night, a spooky film of some description. Sam has told me the title, and I have forgotten what it is. And yeah, we've put 9 p.m. BST, not BST, sorry, GMT now, as just a, like, this is our usual stream time, so we've just put it on the Discord. But The Innocents, that's the one. But yeah, we haven't actually decided on a time, so Sam is going to poll and see what times people would prefer. So yeah, but for anybody who is up for a spooky watch along tomorrow evening, then or tomorrow at some point, depending on which time zone you are in, we shall be doing that over on the Discord. So do hop in and join us, because we will be watching it for the first time, and yeah, hopefully you can watch it with us and enjoy. We did a watch along on Book Week in August, and you all seemed to enjoy it, so we decided to do a Halloween one. Might make it a yearly thing, because it was fun and we enjoyed it. You feel like you've heard that name before? Yeah, I think I have as well. When Sam mentioned it, I was like, ooh, another Michael Redgrave. Nice. You won't be able to stay for the whole thing because of choir, but exciting. Okay, no worries. Weak indeed. You're making Dave watch Lord of the Rings with the... Oh, good lord. Right, nice short one then. But yeah, so that's the plan for tomorrow evening. But tonight we will be finishing off the spookiest of tales, The Turn of the Screw, which extended editions too. Good lord. My god. So what, the whole thing? We'll be stuck with Dave for like a whole day at that rate. Or rather, Dave will be stuck with chat for a whole day. Oh, excuse me. Oh. 12 hours, poor guy. You ruthless people. Yeah, it was his fault for giving you the option. This is true. He is only bringing this upon himself. At least you won't have to do a 25-hour stream. No, true. But yeah, Sam and I have been doing, like, getting into the spooky spirit. There was the yawn. Yeah, I think I've already yawned like 2 or 3 times, Yoru. Doing well. yeah, we what did we watch? We started watching The Haunting of Hill House because someone in chat, I can't remember who it was, recommended, well, because of Turn of the Screw, the Haunting of Bly Manor is obviously based on Bly Manor or Bly House in this, and that then went on to, that's like sort of art, like the same people who did Haunting of Hill House. And I've heard that Haunting of Hill House is very good, and I think, yeah, various people in chat said it was good. Oh, Andy Pants, probably you then. And so, yeah, we started watching it. I think we got 2 episodes in, possibly 3. And yeah, it's very good and very spooky. Yeah, have enjoyed so far. And also, do we watch anything else spooky? Basically, we paid for Netflix for a month and then we'll cancel again. You've read the book, haven't seen any of it. Hill House is brilliant, but it's been 6 years and you're still scared. Oh boy, okay. It's pretty scary to start with. It was the bargain for him not having to do a 25-hour stream. I see. Right. Oh, you watched The Addams Family last night, Andy? Nice. Good choice. You think you prefer Bly Manor out of all the Mike Flanagan shows? Oh, okay. Not spooky, but seasonally appropriate. Oh, yeah, absolutely. Addams Family are top-notch. Your Halloweeny thing will do probably start another through of Night in the Woods. Oh, okay. Yeah, I was sitting there going, what? Nice. You've been watching Oxbox's Hallow stream, but it's not been very spooky. Well, sometimes not spooky is quite nice. Tonight it's going to be Dracula, Dead and Loving It. Right, incredible. Okay, you have some excellent Halloween choices, I see. Oh, you're waiting for Agatha All Along's finale tonight. It's really good. Yeah, I've heard lots of good things about that. I still need to watch WandaVision, actually. Because I feel like one has to watch WandaVision and then Agatha All Along. But yeah, we watched that. Oh, we watched the first series and sort of halfway through the second series of Russian Doll, which is kind of time loop weirdness. It's really good. I really enjoyed it. Well, the first series, and we are enjoying the second series. Is good. Definitely, but WandaVision is also good. Yeah, okay, nice. But yeah, really enjoyed Russian Doll. Very good. Recommend Heartstopper. Oh no. So Sam and I watched The Good Place last year, the year before, and it kind of destroyed us. And I think we're on a bit of hiatus from, watching things that will make us cry. And I feel like Heartstopper will make us cry. Although I feel like something got me that we were watching. It might have actually been Russian Doll. Possibly. But it's very cozy and wholesome. Okay. The Good Place is so good, you need to rewatch that. Yeah, I'm never rewatching it. It is fantastic, but I don't think I can handle it. Like, we were in pieces. Absolute pieces in several, not even just at the end, but just, yeah, like, for a lot of it, we were just sitting there, yeah, that hits hard. That's a fantastic show, but my goodness me, when it pulls the emotional punches, it pulls them. But yeah, we have a lot of to watch things. It's a very long list. You need to finish The Good Place. You love the first couple of seasons, but stop because life got in the way. Shame. Oh, something we should definitely watch, actually, is we should do a watch along, actually, at some point, I think, on Discord, because frankly I think it's the only way I can get Sam to watch it. Psycho, as in Hitchcock, because my goodness me, is that a good Halloween film. Funniest and cleverest show. It is fantastic. You stop because life got in the way. That is fair. It's quite a long show. Yeah. Oh, I think we have a Hitchcock fan in chat. Yeah, I feel like we should definitely do either as a Halloween watch along or, just a watch along at some point on the Discord. Psycho, because Psycho is one of those films, as with a lot of Hitchcock, to be fair, that absolutely is like one to watch again and again and again, and like you can pull stuff out of it every watch, basically, because it's very cleverly put together. It's a clever film, and like yeah, lots of symbolism, lots of fun stuff, and just Psycho was the one with the first flushing toilet on screen. Yes, or at least that is the I don't know what people say. Whether it's true or not, I don't know, but I think it is. The first it's not necessarily the first toilet on screen, but it's the first flushing toilet, like the first like footage of a toilet being flushed. You've only seen it once and always meant to watch it again. Yeah, it is one of those films that I'm always like, oh, people should watch this. When I lived with my flatmate, we watched it once, and then we watched it again, and she was sitting there going, oh, and then we watched it again, and she was like, oh, I'm picking up more things now, and I was like, yes. You're obsessed with Psycho in your weird teenage years. It's very, very good. You're not seeing it, not sure you should, but maybe. Like, it is a kind of cult classic for a reason. I mean, a lot of Hitchcock's films are fantastic. I'm a big fan of The Birds, mainly because of the fact that it doesn't use any music. And it's only sort of halfway through the film that you realise, oh, that's why I'm feeling so kind of tense and horrible. There's no music in this telling me how I should feel. And the whole thing is just tense. It's horrible, but very good. Vertigo is pure, wonderful melodrama, but also really cool, fun plot twists and things. Very long film, but very good as well. Turns out I like Hitchcock. Horrible man, but turns out he did unfortunately make good films. And also Bernard Herrmann's music is top notch. So yeah, maybe we'll do that at some point as well. Have to find it somewhere. Have I seen Hell of a Boss or Has Been Hotel? I have seen all of Hell of a Boss. I haven't... Oh yeah, Has Been Hotel's on Netflix. No. Is it? Is Has Been Hotel Netflix? Ooh, maybe I forced Sam to watch Has Been Hotel. Maybe I should do that. Anthony Perkins was so very good in Psycho. Oh, Prime, it's on Amazon. Ah, damn. He was... Yeah, Anthony Perkins in Psycho is fantastic. Sadly, another actor who just kind of... Fame kind of ruined his life, which is a shame. Your friend who loves Has Been says to start with the prologue on YouTube. Yeah, I've watched the prologue on YouTube and the first episode, because that was available on YouTube, but I haven't seen any of the rest of it. I was just very happy that we got... My brain has gone. Oh my goodness me. Beetlejuice actor... Well, I say Beetlejuice actor. Beetlejuice on, Broadway actor. Alex Brightman. There we go. I was going to say Alex Beardsley or something. No, Brightman. Alex Brightman. That's the one. Just very happy that, they got him on board for Has Been Hotel as well, because my goodness me, that guy's voice is terrifying, but yeah, weird and very good, and it's very difficult to listen to without going, you're hurting yourself, even though I know he's not. But yeah, turns out if you've got a weird thing that you can do with your voice, everybody wants you to do the weird thing you do with your voice. But yeah, Has Been Hotel and Hell of a Boss I've been keeping up with, and I can't remember, I only discovered that like earlier this year. Really good, fantastic. And again, like kind of one of those things that's just like, oh, this is a fun, like irreverent, incredibly like crazy show, but actually, oh boy, it's starting to pack emotional punches. And yeah, it's good. You have no idea what or who this is, but now you're intrigued. Well, someone will probably put a link on the Discord. Yeah, it's an animated series, kind of set in hell. That's kind of all you need to know. Another take on Christian hell / heaven mythology. Yeah, and it's rather good, and very silly and funny. But yeah, Anyway, now we've just talked about, like, you know, sort of Halloween related things. Shall we do a spookums? Shall we carry on with our spooky tale of weird children and ghosts? Oh, you can rent stuff now. You don't have any streaming subscription. You find somewhere to rent and watch. Yeah, do it, Arian. Woo. But yeah, so last time on The Turn of the Screw, you've gotten hope. Yes! Nailed it. But with great characters, brilliant dialogue, captivating plot, etc. Yes, and fantastic voice acting. But yes, last time on The Turn of the Screw, everything is fine, everything is okay, it's all fine. Flora has gone missing. And, well, had gone missing. Flora just disappeared. Miles was being creepy. And our main character has gone, ah, crap, Flora's gone. Let's go find her. And they had to row across the lake, which somehow this, I can't remember how old Flora's meant to be, like 6 or 8 or something year old, could do. And she's just chilling in a little copse, and everything's fine. Yeah. Everything's okay. And what's the relation between characters? So Miles and Flora are brother and sister. Their parents are no longer. Their uncle is like their guardian. He is currently away, but he has hired our main character, whose name we don't actually ever find out, I don't think, to basically be their kind of teacher and caretaker and stuff. And so she's doing that at the house pretty much on her own. But there is also Mrs. Groves, who's like the housekeeper / governess, who's seems great and lovely, who has informed our main character that there were, like, basically the main character's predecessor, Miss Jessel was the previous kind of teacher / caretaker of the kids, and she died after sort of having a bit of a fling with the kind of sort of hired hand at the time, Peter Quint, who, by all intents and purposes, is just a creep and just kind of a petty criminal, possibly more than a petty criminal, we're not entirely sure, just bad. Just bad man. And they're both dead, except they're still hanging around. And the kids have been chatting to them, and it's all fine. So, yeah. That's kind of where we are. Doesn't seem like the protagonist has a name. Internet says governess. Yeah, I didn't think she had a name. Thank you, that is all right. Yeah, and our main character has finally, like for the first time, I think, said and asked Flora where Miss Jessel is, because basically she hasn't really, like, the kids know that she's onto them, but she hasn't, like, actively spoken the names of the ghosts to them yet, and basically said, like, hey, what's up with this? Come on. So, we'll see how that goes. I'm sure it'll be fine. And she also, another important thing to note, our main character has written a letter to the kid's uncle to tell him to come back ASAP. And she has left that letter on the hall table for someone to take. Whether someone will take that or not, who knows? But Miles has said, the little boy, he has said that he can get his uncle to come back. Not entirely sure what that means, but I'm sure it'll be fine. Anyway, if we are all sitting comfortably, if we are all prepared for some spookums, we shall continue with The Turn of the Screw by Henry James. Chapter 20. Just as in the churchyard with Miles, the whole thing was upon us. Much as I had made of the fact that this name had never once between us been sounded, the quick smitten glare with which the child's face now received it fairly likened my breach of the silence to the smash of a pane of glass. It added to the interposing cry, as if to stay the blow, that Mrs. Groves at the same instant uttered over my violence, the shriek of a creature scared, or rather wounded, which, in turn, within a few seconds, was completed by a gasp of my own. I seized my colleague's arm. "She's there! She's there!" Miss Jessel stood before us on the opposite bank, exactly as she had stood the other time, and I remember, strangely, as the first feeling now produced in me, my thrill of joy at having brought on a proof. She was there, so I was justified. She was there, so I was neither cruel nor mad. She was there for poor scared Mrs. Grose, but she was there most for Flora. And no moment of my monstrous time was perhaps so extraordinary as that in which I consciously threw out to her, with the sense that, pale and ravenous demon as she was, she would catch and understand it, an inarticulate message of gratitude. She rose erect on the spot my friend and I had lately quitted, and there wasn't in all the long reach of her desire an inch of her evil that fell short. This first vividness of vision and emotion were things of a few seconds, during which Mrs. Grose's dazed blink across to where I pointed struck me as showing that she too at last saw, just as it carried my own eyes precipitately to the child. The revelation then of the manner in which Flora was affected startled me in truth far more than it would have done to find her also merely agitated, for direct dismay was of course not what I had expected. Prepared and on her guard as our pursuit had actually made her, she would repress every betrayal, and I was therefore at once shaken by my first glimpse of the particular one for which I had not allowed. To see her, without a convulsion of her small pink face, not even feign to glance in the direction of the prodigy I announced, but only, instead of that, turn at me an expression of hard, still gravity, an expression absolutely new and unprecedented, and that appeared to read and accuse and judge me. This was a stroke that somehow converted the little girl herself into a figure portentous. I gaped at her coolness, even though my certitude of her thoroughly seeing was never greater than at that instant, and then, in the immediate need to defend myself, I called her passionately to witness. "She's there, you little unhappy thing! There! 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 And you know it as well as you know me!" I had said shortly before to Mrs. Grose that she was not at these times a child, but an old woman, and my description of her couldn't have been more strikingly confirmed than in the way in which, for all notice of this, she simply showed me, without an expressional concession or admission, a countenance of deeper and deeper, of indeed suddenly quite fixed reprobation. I was by this time, if I can put the whole thing at all together, more appalled at what I may properly call her manner than at anything else, though it was quite simultaneously that I became aware of having Mrs. Grose also, and very formidably, to reckon with. My elder companion the next moment, at any rate, blotted out everything but her own flushed face and her loud, shocked protest, a burst of high disapproval. "What a dreadful turn, to be sure, miss! Where on earth do you see anything?" I could only grasp her more quickly yet, for even while she spoke, the hideous plain presence stood undimmed and undaunted. It had already lasted a minute, and it lasted while I continued, seizing my colleague, quite thrusting her at it and presenting her to it, to insist with my pointing hand. "You don't see her exactly as we see? You mean to say you don't now? Now? She's as big as a blazing fire. Only look, dearest woman, look!" She looked, just as I did, and gave me, with her deep groan of negation, repulsion, compassion, the mixture with her pity of her relief at her exemption, a sense, touching to me even then, that she would have backed me up if she had been able. I might well have needed that, for with this hard blow of the proof that her eyes were hopelessly sealed, I felt my own situation horribly crumble. I saw my livid predecessor press from her position on my defeat, and I took the measure, more than all, of what I should have from this instant to deal with in the astounding little attitude of Flora. Into this attitude Mrs. Grose immediately and violently entered, breaking, even while there pierced through my sense of ruin a prodigious private triumph, into breathless reassurance. "She isn't there, little lady, and nobody's there, and you never see nothing, my sweet. How can poor Miss Jessel, when poor Miss Jessel's dead and buried? We know, don't we, love?" And she appealed, blundering in to the child. "It's all a mere mistake and a worry and a joke, and we'll go home as fast as we can." Our companion, on this, had responded with a strange, quick primness of propriety, and they were again, with Mrs. Grose on her feet, united, as it were, in shocked opposition to me. Flora continued to fix me with her small mask of disaffection, and even at that minute I prayed God to forgive me for seeming to see that, as she stood there holding tight to our friend's dress, her incomparable childish beauty had suddenly failed, had quite vanished. I've said it already. She was hideously hard, she had turned common and almost ugly. "I don't know what you mean. I see nobody. I see nothing. I never have. I think you're cruel. I don't like you." Then, after this deliverance, which might have been that of a vulgarly pert little girl in the street, she hugged Mrs. Grose more closely and buried in her skirts the dreadful little face. In this position she launched an almost furious wail. "Take me away! Take me away! Oh, take me away from her!" "From me?" I panted. "From you! From you!" she cried. Even Mrs. Grose looked across at me, dismayed, while I had nothing to do but communicate again with the figure that, on the opposite bank, without a movement, as rigidly still as if catching, beyond the interval, our voices, was as vividly there for my disaster as it was not there for my service. The wretched child had spoken exactly as if she had got from some outside source each of her stabbing little words, and I could therefore, in the full despair of all I had to accept, but sadly shake my head at her. If I had ever doubted, all my doubt would at present have gone. I've been living with the miserable truth, and now it is only too much closed around me. Of course I've lost you. I've interfered, and you've seen, under her dictation, with which I faced over the pool again our infernal witness, the easy and perfect way to meet it. I've done my best, but I've lost you. Goodbye. For Mrs. Grose I had an imperative, an almost frantic, "Go! Go!" before which, in infinite distress, but mutely possessed of the little girl, and clearly convinced, in spite of her blindness, that something awful had occurred and some collapse engulfed us, she retreated by the way we had come, as fast as she could move. Of what first happened when I was left alone, I had no subsequent memory. I only knew that at the end of, I suppose, a quarter of an hour, an odorous dampness and roughness, chilling and piercing my trouble, had made me understand that I must have thrown myself on my face to the ground and given way to a wildness of grief. I must have lain there long, and cried and wailed, for when I raised my head the day was almost done. I got up and looked a moment through the twilight at the grey pool and its blank haunted edge, and then I took back to the house my dreary and difficult course. When I reached the gate in the fence, the boat, to my surprise, was gone, so that I had a fresh reflection to make on Flora's extraordinary command of the situation. She passed that night by the most tacit and, I should add, were not the word so grotesque a false note, the happiest of arrangements with Mrs. Grose. I saw neither of them on my return, but on the other hand I saw, as by an ambiguous compensation, a great deal of Miles. I saw, I can use no other phrase, so much of him that it fairly measured more than it had ever measured. No evening I had passed at Bly was to have had the portentous quality of this one, in spite of which, and in spite also of the deeper depths of consternation that had opened beneath my feet, there was literally, in the ebbing actual, an extraordinarily sweet sadness. On reaching the house, I had never so much as looked for the boy. I had simply gone straight to my room to change what I was wearing, and to take in, at a glance, much material testimony to Flora's rupture. Her little belongings had all been removed. When later, by the schoolroom fire, I was served with tea by the usual maid, I indulged, on the article of my other pupil, in no inquiry whatever. He had his freedom now. He might have it to the end. Well, he did have it, and it consisted, in part at least, of his coming in at about 8 o'clock and sitting down with me in silence. On the removal of the tea things, I had blown out the candles and drawn my chair closer. I was conscious of a mortal coldness, and felt as if I should never again be warm. So when he appeared, I was sitting in the glow with my thoughts. He paused a moment by the door, as if to look at me, then, as if to share them, came to the other side of the hearth and sank into a chair. We sat there in absolute stillness. Yet he wanted, I felt, to be with me. Chapter 21. Before a new day in my room had fully broken, my eyes opened to Mrs. Grose, who had come to my bedside with worse news. Flora was so markedly feverish that an illness was perhaps at hand. She had passed a night of extreme unrest, a night agitated above all by fears that had for their subject, not in the least, her former, but wholly her present governess. It was not against the possible re-entrance of Miss Jessel on the scene that she protested. It was conspicuously and passionately against mine. I was at once on my feet, and with an immense deal to ask, the more that my friend had discernibly now girded her loins to meet me afresh. This I felt as soon as I had put to her the question of her sense of the child's sincerity as against my own. She persists in denying to you that she saw or has ever seen anything? My visitor's trouble truly was great. Ah, miss, it isn't a matter on which I can push her. Yet it isn't either, I must say, as if I much needed to. It has made her, every inch of her, quite old. Oh, I see her perfectly from here. She resents, for all the world like some high little personage, the imputation on her truthfulness, and, as it were, her respectability. Miss Jessel, indeed, she! Ah, she's respectable, the chit. The impression she gave me there yesterday was, I assure you, the very strangest of all. It was quite beyond any of the others. I did put my foot in it. she'll never speak to me again." Hideous and obscure as it all was, it held Mrs. Groves briefly silent. Then she granted my point with a frankness which, I made sure, had more behind it. "I think indeed, miss, she never will. She do have a grand manner about it." "And that manner," I summed it up, "is practically what's the matter with her now." Oh, that manner I could see in my visitor's face, and not a little else besides. "She asks me every 3 minutes if I think you're coming in." I see. I, too, on my side, had so much more than worked it out. "Has she said to you since yesterday, except to repudiate her familiarity with anything so dreadful, a single other word about Miss Jessel?" "Not one, miss. And of course, you know," my friend added, "I took it from her by the lake that just there and then and there at least there was nobody." "Rather. And naturally you take it from her still." "I don't contradict her. What else can I do?" "Nothing in the world. You've the cleverest little person to deal with. They've made them, their two friends, I mean, still cleverer than nature did, for it was wondrous material to play on. Flora has now her grievance, and she'll work it to the end." "Yes, miss, but to what end?" "Why, that of dealing with me to her uncle. She'll make me out to him the lowest creature." I winced at the fair show of the scene in Mrs. Groves's face. She looked for a minute as if she sharply saw them together. "And him who thinks so well of you." "He has an odd way, it comes over me now," I laughed, "of proving it. But that doesn't matter. What Flora wants, of course, is to get rid of me." My companion bravely concurred. "Never again to so much as look at you." "So that what you've come to me now for," I asked, "is to speed me on my way?" Before she had time to reply, however, I had her in check. "I've a better idea, the result of my reflections. My going would seem the right thing, and on Sunday I was terribly near it. Yet that won't do. It's you who must go. You must take Flora." My visitor at this did speculate. "But where in the world—" "Away from here. Away from them. Away, even most of all now, from me. Straight to her uncle." "Only to tell on you?" "No, not only. To leave me, in addition, with my remedy." She was still vague. "And what is your remedy?" "Your loyalty, to begin with. And then Miles's." She looked at me hard. "Do you think he won't, if he has the chance, turn on me?" "Yes, I venture still to think it. At all events, I want to try." "Get off with his sister as soon as possible, and leave me with him alone." I was amazed, myself, at the spirit I had still in reserve, and therefore perhaps a trifle the more disconcerted at the way in which, in spite of this fine example of it, she hesitated. "There's one thing, of course," I went on. "They mustn't, before she goes, see each other for 3 seconds." Then it came over me that, in spite of Flora's presumable sequestration, that from the instant of her return from the pool, it might already be too late. "Do you mean," I anxiously asked, "that they have met?" At this she quite flushed. "Ah, miss, I'm not such a fool as that. If I've been obliged to leave her 3 or 4 times, it has been each time with one of the maids, and at present, though she's alone, she's locked in safe. And yet... There were too many things. And yet what? Well, are you so sure of the little gentleman? I'm not sure of anything but you. But I have, since last evening, a new hope. I think he wants to give me an opening. I do believe that, poor little exquisite wretch, he wants to speak. Last evening, in the firelight and the silence, he sat with me for 2 hours as if it were just coming. Mrs. Groves looked hard through the window at the grey gathering day. And did it come? No, though I waited and waited, I confess it didn't. And it was without a breach of the silence, or so much as a faint allusion to his sister's condition and absence, that we at last kissed for good night. All the same, I continued, I can't, if her uncle sees her, consent to his seeing her brother without my having given the boy, and most of all because things have got so bad, a little more time. My friend appeared on this ground more reluctant than I could quite understand. What do you mean by more time? Well, a day or two, really to bring it out. He'll then be on my side, of which you see the importance. If nothing comes, I shall only fail, and you at the worst have helped me by doing on your arrival in town whatever you may have found possible. So I put it before her, but she continued for a little, so lost in other reasons that I came again to her aid. Unless, indeed, I wound up, you really want not to go. I could see it in her face at last clear itself. She put out her hand to me as a pledge. I'll go. I'll go. I'll go this morning. I wanted to be very just. If you should wish still to wait, I'd engage she shouldn't see me. No, it's the place itself. She must leave it. She held me a moment with heavy eyes, then brought out the rest. Your idea's the right one. I myself, miss. Well, I can't stay. The look she gave me with it made me jump at possibilities. You mean that since yesterday you have seen? She shook her head with dignity. I've heard. Heard? From that child. Horrors. There. She sighed with tragic relief. On my honour, miss, she says things. But at this evocation she broke down. She dropped with a sudden cry upon my sofa and, as I had seen her do before, gave way to all the anguish of it. It was in quite another manner that I, for my part, let myself go. Oh, thank God! She sprang up again at this, drying her eyes with a groan. Thank God? It so justifies me. It does that, miss. I couldn't have desired more emphasis, but I waited. She's so horrible? I saw my colleague scarce know how to put it. Really shocking. And about me? About you, miss, since you must have it. It's beyond everything for a young lady, and I can't think wherever she must have picked up the appalling language she applies to me. I can, then. I broke in with a laugh that was doubtless significant enough. It only, in truth, left my friend still more grave. Well, perhaps I ought to also, since I've heard some of it before, yet I can't bear it. The poor woman went on while with the same movement she glanced on my dressing table at the face of my watch. But I must go back. I kept her, however. If you can't bear it. How can I stop with her, you mean? Why, just for that, to get her away. Far from this, she pursued, far from them. She may be different, she may be free. I seized her almost with joy. Then in spite of yesterday, you believe? in such doings?" Her simple description of them required, in the light of her expression, to be carried no further, and she gave me the whole thing as she had never done. "I believe." Yes, it was a joy, and we were still shoulder to shoulder. If I might continue sure of that, I should care but little what else happened. My support in the presence of disaster would be the same as it had been in my early need of confidence. And if my friend would answer for my honesty, I would answer for all the rest. On the point of taking leave of her, nonetheless, I was to some extent embarrassed. "There's one thing, of course, it occurs to me to remember. My letter giving the alarm will have reached town before you." I now felt still more how she had been beating about the bush, and how weary at last it had made her. "Your letter won't have got there. Your letter never went." "What then became of it?" "Goodness knows. Master Miles—" "You mean he took it?" I gasped. She hung fire, but she overcame her reluctance. "I mean that I saw yesterday, when I came back with Miss Flora, that it wasn't where you had put it. Later in the evening I had the chance to question Luke, and he declared that he had neither noticed nor touched it." We could only exchange on this, one of our deeper mutual soundings, and it was Mrs. Grose who first brought up the plum with an almost elate, "You see?" "Yes. I see that if Miles took it instead, he probably will have read it and destroyed it." "And don't you see anything else?" I faced her a moment with a sad smile. "It strikes me but that by this time your eyes are open even wider than mine." They proved to be so indeed, but she could still almost blush to show it. "I make out now what he must have done at school." And she gave, in her simple sharpness, an almost droll, disillusioned nod. "He stole." I turned it over. I tried to be more judicial. "Well, perhaps." She looked as if she found me unexpectedly calm. "He stole letters." She couldn't know my reasons for a calmness, after all pretty shallow, so I showed them off as I might. "I hope, then, it was to more purpose than in this case. The note, at all events, that I put on the table yesterday," I pursued, "will have given him so scant an advantage, for it contained only the bare demand for an interview, that he's already much ashamed of having gone so far for so little, and that what he had on his mind last evening was precisely the need of confession." I seemed to myself for the instant to have mastered it, to see it all. "Leave us, leave us." I was already at the door, hurrying her off. "I'll get it out of him. He'll meet me, he'll confess. If he confesses, he's saved. And if he's saved—" "Then you are?" The dear woman kissed me on this, and I took her farewell. "I'll save you without him," she cried as she went. Chapter 22. Yet it was when she had got off, and I missed her on the spot, that the great pinch really came. If I had counted on what it would give me to find myself alone with Miles, I quickly recognised that it would give me at least a measure. No hour of my stay, in fact, was so assailed with apprehensions as that of my coming down to learn that the carriage containing Mrs. Grose and my younger pupil had already rolled out of the gates. Now I was, I said to myself, face to face with the elements, and for much of the rest of the day, while I fought my weakness, I could consider that I had been supremely rash. It was a tighter place still than I had yet turned round in, all the more that, for the first time, I could see in the aspect of others a confused reflection of the crisis. What had happened naturally caused them all to stare. There was too little of the explained, throw out whatever we might, in the suddenness of my colleague's act. The maids and the men looked blank, the effect of which on my nerves was an aggravation until I saw the necessity of making it a positive aid. It was, in short, by just clutching the helm that I avoided total wreck. And I dare say that, to bear up at all, I became that morning very grand and very dry. I welcomed the consciousness that I was charged with much to do, and I caused it to be known as well that, left thus to myself, I was quite remarkably firm. I wandered with that manner for the next hour or two all over the place, and looked, I have no doubt, as if I were ready for any onset. So, for the benefit of whom it might concern, I paraded with a sick heart. The person it appeared least to concern proved to be, till dinner, little Miles himself. My perambulations had given me meanwhile no glimpse of him, but they had tended to make more public the change taking place in our relation as a consequence of his having at the piano the day before kept me in Flora's interest, so beguiled and befooled. The stamp of publicity had of course been fully given by her confinement and departure, and the change itself was now ushered in by our non-observance of the regular custom of the schoolroom. He had already disappeared when, on my way down, I pushed open his door, and I learned below that he had breakfasted, in the presence of a couple of the maids, with Mrs. Grose and his sister. He had then gone out, as he said, for a stroll, than which nothing, I reflected, could better have expressed his frank view of the abrupt transformation of my office. What he would now permit this office to consist of was yet to be settled. There was at least a queer relief, I mean for myself in especial, in the renouncement of one pretension. If so much had sprung to the surface, I scarce put it too strongly in saying that what had perhaps sprung highest was the absurdity of our prolonging the fiction that I had anything more to teach him. It sufficiently stuck out that, by tacit little tricks in which even more than myself he carried out the care for my dignity, I had had to appeal to him to let me off straining to meet him on the ground of his true capacity. He had, at any rate, his freedom now. I was never to touch it again, as I had amply shown, moreover, when, on his joining me in the schoolroom the previous night, I uttered, in reference to the interval just concluded, neither challenge nor hint. I had too much, from this moment, my other ideas. Yet, when he at last arrived, the difficulty of applying them, the accumulations of my problem, were brought straight home to me by the beautiful little presents on which what had occurred had as yet, for the eye, dropped neither stain nor shadow. To mark, for the house, the high state I cultivated, I decreed that my meals with the boy should be served, as we called it, downstairs, so that I had been awaiting him in the ponderous pomp of the room outside the window of which I had from Mrs. Grose, that first scared Sunday, my flash of something it would have scarce done to call light. Here at present I felt afresh, for I had felt it again and again, how my equilibrium depended on the success of my rigid will, the will to shut my eyes as tight as possible to the truth that what I had to deal with was revoltingly against nature. I could only get on at all by taking nature into my confidence and my account, by treating my monstrous ordeal as a push in a direction unusual, of course, and unpleasant, but demanding, after all, for a fair front, only another turn of the screw of ordinary human virtue. No attempt, none the less, could well require more tact than just this attempt to supply oneself all the nature. How could I put even a little of that article into a suppression of reference to what had occurred? How, on the other hand, could I make a reference without a new plunge into the hideous obscure? Well, a sort of answer, after a time, had come to me, and it was so far confirmed as that I was met, incontestably, by the quickened vision of what was rare in my little companion. It was, indeed, as if he had found even now, as he had so often found at lessons, still some other delicate way to ease me off. Wasn't there light in the fact which, as we shared our solitude, broke out with a specious glitter it had never quite worn? The fact that, opportunity aiding, precious opportunity which had now come, it would be preposterous, with a child so endowed, to forego the help one might wrest from absolute intelligence. What had his intelligence been given him for but to save him? Mightn't one, to reach his mind, risk the stretch of a stiff arm across his character? It was as if, when we were face to face in the dining room, he had literally shown me the way. The roast mutton was on the table, and I had dispensed with attendance. Miles, before he sat down, stood a moment with his hands in his pockets and looked at the joint, on which he seemed on the point of passing some humorous judgment. But what he presently produced was, "I say, my dear, is she really very awfully ill?" "Little Flora? Not so bad but that she'll presently be better. London will set her up. Bligh had ceased to agree with her. Come here and take your mutton." He alertly obeyed me, carried the plate carefully to his seat, and, when he was established, went on. "Did Bligh disagree with her so terribly all at once?" "Not so suddenly as you might think. One had seen it coming on." "Then why didn't you get her off before?" "Before what?" "Before she became so too ill to travel." I found myself prompt. She's not too ill to travel. She only might have become so if she had stayed. This was just the moment to seize. The journey will dissipate the influence. Oh, I was grand. And carry it off. I see. Miles, for that matter, was grand too. He settled to his repast with the charming little table manner that, from the day of his arrival, had relieved me of all grossness of admonition. Whatever he had been expelled from school for, it wasn't for ugly feeding. He was irreproachable, as always, today, but was unmistakably more conscious. He was discernibly trying to take for granted more things than he found, without assistance, quite easy, and he dropped into peaceful silence while he felt his situation. Our meal was of the briefest, mine a vain pretence, and I had the things immediately removed. While this was done, Miles stood again with his hands in his little pockets and his back to me, stood and looked out of the wide window through which, that other day, I had seen what pulled me up. We continued silent while the maid was with us. As silent, it whimsically occurred to me, as some young couple who, on their wedding journey at the inn, feel shy in the presence of the waiter. He turned round only when the waiter had left us. "Well, so we're alone." Chapter 23. "Oh, more or less." I imagine my smile was pale. "Not absolutely. We shouldn't like that," I went on. "No, I suppose we shouldn't. Of course, we've the others." We've indeed the others," I concurred. "Yet, even though we have them," he returned, still with his hands in his pockets and planted there in front of me, "they don't much count, do they?" I made the best of it, but I felt won. It depends on what you call much. Yes, with all accommodation. Everything depends. On this, however, he faced to the window again, and presently reached it with his vague, restless, cogitating step. He remained there a while with his forehead against the glass, in contemplation of the stupid shrubs I knew and the dull things of November. I had always my hypocrisy of work, behind which I now gained the sofa. Steadying myself with it there, as I had repeatedly done at those moments of torment that I have described as the moments of my knowing the children to be given to something from which I was barred, I sufficiently obeyed my habit of being prepared for the worst. But an extraordinary impression dropped on me as I extracted a meaning from the boy's embarrassed back. None other than the impression that I was not barred now. This inference grew in a few minutes to sharp intensity and seemed bound up with the direct perception that it was positively he who was. The frames and squares of the great window were a kind of image, for him, of a kind of failure. I felt that I saw him, in any case, shut in or shut out. He was admirable, but not comfortable. I took it in with a throb of hope. Wasn't he looking through the haunted pane for something he couldn't see? And wasn't it the first time in the whole business that he had known such a lapse? The first, the very first. I found it a splendid portent. It made him anxious, though he watched himself. He had been anxious all day, and even while in his usual sweet little manner he sat at table, had needed all his small strange genius to give it a gloss. When at last he turned around to meet me, it was almost as if this genius had succumbed. "Well, I think I'm glad Bligh agrees with me." You'd certainly seemed to have seen these 24 hours, a good deal more of it than for some time before. I hope, I went on bravely, that you've been enjoying yourself. "Oh, yes. I've been ever so far, all round about, miles and miles away. I've never been so free." He had really a manner of his own, and I could only try to keep up with him. "Well, do you like it?" He stood there smiling. Then at last he put into 2 words, "Do you?" More discrimination than I had ever heard 2 words contain. Before I had time to deal with that, however, he continued as if with the sense that this was an impertinence to be softened. "Nothing could be more charming than the way you take it, for of course if we're alone together, now it's you that are alone most. But I hope," he threw in, "you don't particularly mind." "Having to do with you?" I asked. "My dear child, how can I help minding? Though I've renounced all claim to your company, you're so beyond me, I at least greatly enjoy it. What else should I stay on for?" He looked at me more directly, and the expression on his face, graver now, struck me as the most beautiful I had ever found in it. "You stay on just for that?" "Certainly. I stay on as your friend, and from the tremendous interest I take in you, till something can be done for you that may be more worth your while. That needn't surprise you." My voice trembled so that I felt it impossible to suppress the shake. "Don't you remember how I told you, when I came and sat on your bed the night of the storm, that there was nothing in the world I wouldn't do for you?" "Yes, yes." He, on his side, more and more visibly nervous, had a tone to master, but he was so much more successful than I that, laughing out through his gravity, he could pretend we were pleasantly jesting. "Only that, I think, was to get me to do something for you." It was partly to get you to do something, I conceded. But you know you didn't do it. Oh, yes, he said with the brightest superficial eagerness. You wanted me to tell you something. That's it. Out, straight out. What you have on your mind, you know. Ah, then is that what you've stayed over for? He spoke with a gaiety through which I could still catch the finest little quiver of resentful passion, but I can't begin to express the effect upon me of an implication of surrender even so faint. It was as if what I had yearned for had come at last, only to astonish me. Well, yes. I may as well make a clean breast of it. It was precisely for that. He waited so long that I supposed it for the purpose of repudiating the assumption on which my action had been founded, but what he finally said was, "Do you mean now? Here?" There couldn't be a better place or time. He looked round him uneasily, and I had the the queer impression of the very first symptom I had seen in him of the approach of immediate fear. It was as if he was suddenly afraid of me, which struck me, indeed, as perhaps the best thing to make him. Yet, in the very pang of the effort, I felt it vain to try sternness, and I heard myself the next instant so gentle as to be almost grotesque. You want so to go out again? Awfully! He smiled at me heroically, and the touching little bravery of it was enhanced by his actually flushing with pain. He had picked up his hat, which he had brought in, and stood twirling it in a way that gave me, even as I was just nearly reaching port, a perverse horror of what I was doing. To do it in any way was an act of violence, for what did it consist of but the obtrusion of the idea of grossness and guilt on a small, helpless creature who had been for me a revelation of the possibilities of beautiful intercourse? Wasn't it base to create for a being so exquisite a mere alien awkwardness? I suppose I now read into our situation a clearness it couldn't have had at the time, for I seemed to see our poor eyes already lighted with some spark of a prevision of the anguish that was to come. So we circled about with terrors and scruples, fighters not daring to close. But it was for each other we feared. That kept us a little longer suspended and unbruised. "I'll tell you everything," Miles said. I'll tell you anything you like. You'll stay on with me, and we shall both be all right. And I will tell you. I will. But not now." "Why not now?" My resistance turned him from me and kept him once more at his window, in a silence during which, between us, you might have heard a pin drop. Then he was before me again, with the air of a person for whom, outside, someone who had frankly to be reckoned with was waiting. "I have to see Luke." I had not yet reduced him to quite so vulgar a lie, and I felt proportionately ashamed. But, horrible as it was, his lies made up my truth. I achieved thoughtfully a few loops of my knitting. "Well, then go to Luke, and I'll wait for what you promise. Only in return for that, satisfy before you leave me one very much smaller request." He looked as if he felt he had succeeded enough to be able still a little to bargain. "Very much smaller?" "Yes, a mere fraction of the whole. Tell me—" Oh, my work preoccupied me, and I was offhand. "If yesterday afternoon, from the table in the hall, you took, my letter." Chapter 24. My grasp of how he received this suffered a minute from something that I can describe only as a fierce split of my attention. A stroke that at first, as I sprang straight up, reduced me to the mere blind movement of getting hold of him, drawing him close, and while I just fell for support against the nearest piece of furniture, instinctively keeping him with his back to the window. The appearance was full upon us that I had already had to deal with here. Peter Quint had come into view like a sentinel before a prison. The next thing I saw was that, from outside, he had reached the window, and then I knew that, close to the glass and glaring in through it, he offered once more to the room his white face of damnation. It represents but grossly what took place within me at the sight, to say that on the second my decision was made. Yet I believe that no woman so overwhelmed ever in so short a time recovered her command of the act. It came to me in the very horror of the immediate presence that the act would be, seeing and facing what I saw and faced, to keep the boy himself unaware. The inspiration, I can call it by no other name, was that I felt how voluntarily, how transcendently I might. It was like fighting with a demon for a human soul, and when I had fairly so appraised it, I saw how the human soul, held out in the tremor of my hands at arm's length, had a perfect dew of sweat on a lovely childish forehead. The face that was close to mine was as white as the face against the glass, and out of it presently came a sound, not low or weak, but as if from much further away, that I drank like a waft of fragrance. Yes, I took it. At this, with a moan of joy, I drew him close, and while I held him to my breast, where I could feel, in the sudden fever of his little body, the tremendous pulse of his little heart, I kept my eyes on the thing at the window, and saw it move and shift its posture. I have likened it to a sentinel, but its slow wheel for a moment was rather the prowl of a baffled beast. My present quickened courage, however, was such that, not too much to let it through, I had to shade, as it were, my flame. Meanwhile, the glare of the face was again at the window, the scoundrel fixed as if to watch and wait. It was the very confidence that I might now defy him, as well as the positive certitude by this time of the child's unconsciousness, that made me go on. What did you take it for? To see what you said about me. You opened the letter? I opened it. My eyes were now, as I held him off a little again, on Miles's own face. Excuse me again. In which the collapse of mockery showed me how complete was the ravage of uneasiness. What was prodigious was that at last, by my success, his sense was sealed and his communication stopped. He knew that he was in presence, but knew not of what, and knew still less that I also was and that I did know. And what did this strain of trouble matter when my eyes went back to the window, only to see that the air was clear again, and, by my personal triumph, the influence quenched? There was nothing there. I felt that the cause was mine, and that I should surely get all. And you found nothing? I let my elation out. He gave me the most mournful, thoughtful little headshake. Nothing. Nothing! Nothing! I almost shouted in my joy. Nothing, nothing, he sadly repeated. I kissed his forehead. It was drenched. So what have you done with it? I've burnt it. Burnt it? It was now or never. "Is that what you did at school?" Oh, what this brought up. "At school? Did you take letters or other things?" Other things? He appeared now to be thinking of something far off and that reached him only through the pressure of his anxiety. Yet it did reach him. Did I steal? I felt myself redden to the roots of my hair, as well as wonder if it were more strange to put to a gentleman such a question, or see him take it with allowances that gave the very distance of his fall back in the world. Of his fall in the world. Was it for that you mightn't go back? The only thing he felt was rather a dreary little surprise. Did you know I mightn't go back? I know everything. He gave me at this the longest and strangest look. Everything? Everything. Therefore, did you? But I couldn't say it again. Miles could, very simply. No, I didn't steal. My face must have shown him I believed him utterly, yet my hands, but it was for pure tenderness, shook him as if to ask him why, if it was all for nothing, he had condemned me to months of torment. Then what then did you do? He looked in vague pain all round the top of the room and drew his breath 2 or 3 times over, as if with difficulty. He might have been standing at the bottom of the sea and raising his eyes to some faint green twilight. Well, I said things. Only that? They thought it was enough? To turn you out for? Never truly had a person turned out shown so little to explain it as this little person. He appeared to weigh my question, but in a manner quite detached and almost helpless. Well, I suppose I oughtn't. But to whom did you say them? He evidently tried to remember, but it dropped. He had lost it. I don't know. He almost smiled at me in the desolation of his surrender, which was, indeed, practically by this time so complete that I ought to have left it there. But I was infatuated, I was blind with victory, though even then the very effect that was to have brought him so much nearer was already that of added separation. Was it to everyone? I asked. No, it was only to... But he gave a sick little headshake. I don't remember their names. Were they then so many? No, only a few. Those I liked. Those he liked? I seemed to float not into clearness, but into a darker obscure, and within a minute there had come to me out of my very pity the appalling alarm of his perhaps being innocent. It was for the instant confounding and bottomless, for if he were innocent, what then on earth was I? Paralysed, while it lasted, by the mere brush of the question, I let him go a little, so that, with a deep drawn sigh, he turned away from me again, which, as he faced toward the clear window, I suffered, feeling that I had nothing now there to keep him from. And did they repeat what you said? I went on after a moment. He was soon at some distance from me, still breathing hard and again with the air, though now without anger for it, of being confined against his will. Once more, as he had done before, he looked up at the dim day, as if, of what had hitherto sustained him, nothing was left but an unspeakable anxiety. Oh, yes, he nevertheless replied. They must have repeated them to those they liked, he added. There was somehow less of it than I had expected, but I turned it over. And these things came round? To the masters? Oh, yes, he answered very simply. But I didn't know they'd tell. The masters? They didn't. They've never told. That's why I ask you. He turned to me again, his little beautiful fevered face. Yes, it was too bad. Too bad? What I suppose I sometimes said, to write home. I can't name the exquisite pathos of the contradiction given to such a speech by such a speaker. I only know that the next instant I heard myself throw off with homely force, "Stuff and nonsense!" But the next after that I must have sounded stern enough. What were those things? My sternness was all for his judge, his executioner, yet it made him avert himself again. And that movement made me, with a single bound and an irrepressible cry, spring straight upon him. For there again, against the glass, as if to blight his confession and stay his answer, was the hideous author of our woe, the white face of damnation. I felt a sick swim at the drop of my victory, and all the return of my battle, so that the wildness of my veritable leap only served as a great betrayal. I saw him, from the midst of my act, meet it with a divination, and on the perception that even now he only guessed, and that the window was still to his own eyes free, I let the impulse flame up to convert the climax of his dismay into the very proof of his liberation. "No more! No more! No more!" I shrieked to my visitant as I tried to press him against me. Is she here?" Miles panted as he caught with his sealed eyes the direction of my words. Then, at his strange she staggered me, and with a gasp I echoed it, "Miss Jessel! Miss Jessel!" He, with sudden fury, gave me back. I seized, stupefied, his supposition, some sequel to what we had done to Flora, but this made me only want to show him that it was better still than that. "It's not Miss Jessel, but it's at the window straight before us. It's there, the coward horror, there for the last time." At this, after a second in which his head made the movement of a baffled dog's on a scent, and then gave a frantic little shake for air and light, he was at me in a white rage, bewildered, glaring vainly over the place, and missing wholly, though it now, to my sense, filled the room like the taste of poison, the wide, overwhelming presence. "It's he?" I was so determined to have all my proof that I dashed into ice to challenge him. "Whom do you mean by he?" "Peter Quint, you devil!" His face gave again round the room its convulsed supplication. "Where?" They are in my ears still, his supreme surrender of the name and his tribute to my devotion. "What does he matter now, my own? What will he ever matter? I have you," I launched at the beast, "but he has lost you for ever." Then, for the demonstration of my work, "There, there," I said to Miles. But he had already jerked straight round, stared, glared again, and seen but the quiet day. With the stroke of the loss I was so proud of, he uttered the cry of a creature hurled over an abyss, and the grasp with which I recovered him might have been that of catching him in his fall. I caught him, yes, I held him. It may be imagined with what a passion. But at the end of a minute I began to feel what it truly was that I held. We were alone with the quiet day, and his little heart, dispossessed, had stopped. The end. Thank you for listening. Well, I'm sure Flora will be fine. Yeah, ruh-roh. Turns out he kind of needed to be possessed to be alive, I guess. So, yeah. Yeah. But I do quite like the sort of the twist there is just like, oh, like, it's not just been Peter Quint who's been possessing Miles. Miss Jessel's been in there as well. It's just like, oh boy, they've been working together on this. I was not expecting that. Yeah. Kid dies. Poor Miles. And we never find out why he was sent home from school or what he said. So yeah. RIP F. Also, the blurb here says, curiously, it was an archbishop's anecdote of unhappy and haunted children which started the turn of the screw. So it's obviously not necessarily based on a true story, but based on an idea of, like, someone who encountered some kind of, I guess, kids who had some trauma. So, yeah. But, yeah, I like left only with implications, exactly. That's what I like about this. Like, there's so much, there's so many questions that you're still left asking, which I think back when mental health was not important. Yes, exactly. Back when mental health didn't exist. But yeah, I really that's what I like with, like, that's what I particularly like with ghost stories. I like it when you still have a lot of questions at the end. In a good way. It's not like, oh, you didn't clear any of this up, we have no idea what's going on kind of thing. But, like, yeah, if you've got some loose ends, I think that works really, really nicely with ghost stories. And this one in particular, it's like, what was actually going on? Like, what were they doing? What were they doing to the kids? Like, whoo, spookums. Now you're allowed to watch The Turning. What's The Turning? Is that Turn of the Screw, I assume? Oh, thank you very much, Arian. Very kind of you. Thank you for cheering the bits. Leave some things to the imagination, just enough to stick in your brain. Oh, it's a film of this. Oh, nice. Okay. Yeah. Like, yeah, I think it's a really good story, and I hope you've all enjoyed it. I certainly have. It's been great. And yeah, the yeah, it's just good stuff. Like that ending is fun. It's not fun, obviously, because the kid dies, but just like what killed the kid, basically? Was it a successful kind of, I guess, sort of exorcism, or did she not triumph, and in fact the ghosts had the kids in their hands for the entire time, and they could just basically snap their fingers and kill them? Yeah, like what was it? Or was it was it her turning him to the window again, and did he see Peter Quint? Who knows? So yeah, maybe a heart attack. Yeah, possibly. I mean, yeah, maybe he's been dead all along and she exorcised all the ghosts in his body. Maybe, who knows? But yeah, turns out Henry James very good at writing creepy kids. Oh, excuse me. Yeah, but also just like the whole image of like, oh, there's Peter Quint. Oh, he's coming close to the window. Oh, he's just like right up against the window now. Oh, hi. Yeah, hello. No, you can't have the child. Piss off. But yeah, probably lead. You'd say it's all down to lead. Yeah, everything is in that time. But yeah, just the idea of him just an angry looking ghost is like, oh boy. scary. And the thing I particularly like with this as well is the ghosts appear just whenever, not in the middle of the night when it's spooky. They're just standing there in the middle of the grounds in the day, just hello. It's like that's the spooky thing. It's just like, oh shit, you see a ghost in the day. Ooh, ah. But yeah. But yes, that takes us to the end of the Turn of the Screw, and I hope you've all very much enjoyed it, as have I. We'll be on the Discord tomorrow. It's going to be movies on the Discord. Movies at the Discord. Movies! ! At the Discord. We shall be doing a watch along of The Innocents. Sam will probably have put some kind of poll somewhere. So go find that if he's put it anywhere and say what time you would prefer. We'll be over there watching along with you guys tomorrow. That'll be fun. And then in theory Sam will be back on Saturday with some more short stories, probably of a spooky variety, because as you all know here, spooky season doesn't end with October for us. It's kind of just like, autumn, winter, it's spooky time, because ghost stories are the thing to read when it's dark. So yeah. But we shall see. Let me just see. I assume Stephen will probably be on. Let's have a look. Da-ba-da. Yeah. So let's go. I shall throw us all over to Stephen, who is a lovely person. We all know and love Stephen. Wonderful person. Go say hi if you want. Don't have to. And yeah, thank you all very much for listening, and thank you all very much for being around for the whole story, those who have. And go take care of yourselves. Go have a good rest of your day, evening, whatever time it is for you. And we shall see as many of you as possible tomorrow. So thank you all very much, and good night.